Hi, dear friends. Today we are going to talk about a rather delicate but extremely important topic, criticism. Have you ever caught yourself thinking that you constantly find faults in others? It seems that no one is perfect in your eyes. Why is it that we humans are so often inclined to see only flaws in others? It's as if we have a program built into us that is constantly scanning the people around us, looking for flaws. If this is the case, you are not alone. Today we'll look at why we are so prone to look for flaws in others, and what you can do to change this habit. After all, constant criticism not only spoils relationships with others, but also poisons our own lives. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to stop looking for flaws and become happier. But first, put a like and click subscribe so you don't lose our channel on the vastness of YouTube. Let's go. Every one of us has faced criticism or criticized someone at least once in our lives. But what happens when criticism becomes our habit? What consequences does it have for ourselves and for our relationships with others? Let's figure it out together. Imagine a sharp arrow that hurts not only the one it is aimed at, but also the one who let it go. So it is with criticism. While it wounds others, it leaves deep scars on our own souls. Constant criticism of others is like a poison that slowly destroys our relationships, our reputation, and our psychological well-being. Let's take a closer look at what consequences such a habit can lead to. Destruction of relationships. When we constantly criticize others, we create an atmosphere of negativity and distrust around us. People begin to avoid us, feel insecure in our presence. Gradually, our relationships become more and more superficial and strained. Imagine telling your friend every day that he is doing something wrong. Chances are, he or she will soon stop sharing his or her thoughts and feelings with you. Now think about your partner. Perhaps you constantly criticize him for scattered socks or forgotten promises. Where does that leave you? Over time, he will stop hearing you, will close in himself or begin to respond in the same coin. And after all, the relationship is a fragile jewel that must be protected. Damage to reputation. A person who constantly criticizes others, over time acquires a reputation as a grumpy, negative and unpleasant person. People begin to avoid his company, fearing that at any moment he may criticize them. And even if you yourself think you are absolutely right, those around you may simply not want to do business with you. What do you think? What feelings do people have to their colleague, who at work constantly points out to everyone their mistakes, shortcomings, discusses them behind their backs? Most likely, they will avoid him, build intrigues and look for ways to take revenge. And after all, the working atmosphere should be friendly and constructive. A damaged reputation can even ruin a career. Finally, let's talk about how constant criticism affects our own psychological well-being. When we constantly focus on the faults of others, we distract ourselves from our own problems. It's as if we're saying to ourselves, "Look how bad he is, but I'm so great." But really, we're just hiding our head in the sand. Constantly criticizing other people drains us of a tremendous amount of energy. We are constantly on edge, ready to defend our point of view at any moment. This leads to chronic stress, irritability, insomnia, and other health problems. In addition, when we criticize others, we often suppress our own negative emotions, which can lead to the development of depression and anxiety disorders. If the habit of criticizing is so harmful, why are people prone to it? Let's discuss the reasons behind the tendency to look for faults in others. We are human beings and by default we are born with some basic characteristics that make us find faults in other people. And it can only be combated with some efforts that are made consciously. The reasons why people tend to find faults lie in the art of finding negativity in other people. People are never completely satisfied with others and are more inclined to see negativity in them rather than positivity. They prefer corrections in feedback and neglect the positives. Let's dig a little deeper. The roots of our habit of criticizing others go deep into our past, into our very childhood. Even as children, we learn to compare ourselves with others to determine our place in the social hierarchy. Imagine a small sprout that is just beginning to break through the ground. To survive, it needs to compare itself to other sprouts: who is taller, who is growing faster, who is stronger. In the same way, as young children, we instinctively compare ourselves with others to see what our strengths are and what we need to work on. It's like a competition: who gets more candy, who learns to read faster, who gets more praise from parents. And that's where the danger lies. If we constantly compare ourselves with others and emphasize the shortcomings, then over time we form an attitude: in order to feel better, you must necessarily find some flaws in others. Remember how in school we were constantly compared to our classmates? Smith wrote an excellent test, and you underachieved, the teacher would say. Or, for example, when we were compared to the more successful children in the family: look at your sister, she's so smart and obedient, and you. Such comparisons, though seemingly harmless, actually leave a deep mark on our psyche. We begin to believe that our worth is determined only by our accomplishments and how we look in comparison to others. And sometimes, in order to feel better about ourselves, we begin to belittle the worth of those around us. It's a defense mechanism that helps us maintain our self-esteem. It's like chasing a carrot: we constantly strive to catch up and overtake someone, but as soon as we reach our goal, a new, even more unattainable peak appears in front of us. And so on in a circle. But most importantly, this does not mean that we are doomed to an eternal race. By understanding the roots of this problem, we can start working on ourselves and change our habits. But it's not just childhood that shapes our tendency to criticize. Often we adopt this behavior from our parents, teachers, or other authority figures. If a family criticized each other, the child internalizes this pattern of communication as the norm. Another reason is the ego, which is far above everything and wants to satisfy itself. The ego needs appreciation from external sources, and when it is not satisfied, you find faults in them to make yourself feel better. By insulting others in one way or another, your brain boosts your self-esteem to feel happy. Let's continue our conversation about the ego and how it makes us look for flaws in others. The ego is that inner critic that is constantly looking for validation of its importance. The ego is the part of our personality that seeks self-affirmation, recognition, and satisfaction. It is like a small child, constantly seeking attention and praise. Why does the ego push us to criticize? The ego craves constant affirmation of its importance. When we find faults in others, we are essentially saying to ourselves, I am better than they are. This creates an illusion of superiority and boosts our self-esteem. Fear of failure also encourages us to nag. Deep down inside, many of us fear that we are not good enough. To cope with this fear, we begin to compare ourselves to others and look for faults in them. This makes us feel more confident and secure. Imagine this situation: you're walking down the street and you see a person dressed a bit oddly. What is the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe you think, what a ridiculous outfit. How can anyone dress like that? Or, he must have self-esteem issues if he's trying so hard to get attention. Now let's figure out what's going on in our heads at that moment. The ego pushes us to compare ourselves to others. We unconsciously evaluate that person and conclude that we are better because we dress more right. This gives us a sense of superiority and boosts our self-esteem. But really, we're just protecting our ego, afraid to admit that everyone has different taste and style. People tend to look for fault. When something goes wrong, our ego looks for someone to blame. Instead of taking responsibility for our mistakes, we blame others. This allows us to maintain the illusion of our own perfection. For example, you're socializing with a coworker who made a mistake at work. Your first reaction is to condemn him and think, "There he goes again. How can you be so inattentive?" At this point, the ego pushes you to emphasize your own merits and show that you are better. But try to look at the situation from the other side. Maybe your coworker has had a difficult day, or maybe he or she is just tired. Also, criticizing others is a kind of defense mechanism. When we point out the faults of others, we divert attention from our own problems and fears. And remember the story about that guy who was always criticizing girls' looks? Turns out that as a kid, he was often teased because of his looks. And now, to protect himself from such attacks, he himself began to criticize others. This is a classic example of how the ego protects us from the pain of the past. Why is it so important to understand how our ego works? When we realize that our judgments of others are often dictated by our ego, we can begin to work on ourselves. We can learn to accept people for who they are and stop comparing ourselves to others. This will help us build deeper and more trusting relationships with others. What can we do? The first step is to recognize that our ego exists and influences us. Practice gratitude. Focus on what you have, not what you lack. Learn to treat yourself with compassion. Accept your flaws and imperfections. Develop empathy. Try to see the situation through the eyes of another person. Engage in self-development. Working on your flaws will help you build self-esteem and stop looking for flaws in others. Build a strong self-esteem based on your actual accomplishments and qualities, not on comparing yourself to others. If you feel you can't manage on your own, seek help from a professional. Remember, each of us is imperfect and has an ego problem to some degree. Looking for faults in others is a natural human desire. But it's important to realize that this desire often prevents us from building happy and fulfilling relationships. Let's work together to make this world a little kinder. In addition, social factors also influence our perceptions. Modern society, with its cult of perfection and the constant race for success, creates enormous competition. In such conditions, we tend to look for weaknesses in others in order to stand out against their background. And there are also psychological reasons. Low self-esteem, insecurity, envy, all this can push us to look for flaws in others. After all, if someone has something we don't have, we can feel even worse about ourselves. Envy is a really deep-rooted reason why people tend to look for flaws in others. Let's take a deeper dive into the psychological mechanisms of envy. You know, I once came across an interesting thought: envy is like a shadow that is constantly trying to catch up with us. And the more we try to run away from it, the longer it gets. Let's look at how that shadow manifests itself in our lives. I thought it would be cool to give a couple examples from life to make things even clearer. Imagine you're scrolling through your social media feed and you see your classmate vacationing in the Maldives. Immediately, a wave of envy hits you. Instead of being happy for her, you start thinking, why her? Everything is so easy for her, and I'm sitting here, working for pennies. Sound familiar? It's a classic example of envy. Instead of being happy for our friend and focusing on our own life, looking for ways to improve it, we start comparing ourselves to others and feel worse. Or here's another example. You're walking down the street and you see someone who, in your opinion, looks very stylish and confident. Immediately the thought pops into your head, I wish I looked like that. She probably feels much more confident than I do. She probably has the perfect life. Again, instead of just admiring someone else's style, we become envious and feel like we're not good enough. Why does this happen? The fact is that envy is comparing ourselves to others not in our own favor. We are constantly looking for validation that we are good enough. And when we see someone succeeding at something more than us, it hurts our ego. We focus on what we don't have and forget about our own accomplishments and merits. It's like we're constantly in a competition where there's always someone better than us. But here's the catch, this race is never over. After all, there will always be someone who looks more successful, happier, or prettier than us. And if we constantly compare ourselves to others, we will never be able to enjoy our own lives and find true happiness. Often what we criticize in others is actually a reflection of our own fears and insecurities. For example, if we envy someone's self-confidence, we may begin to look for signs of arrogance or narcissism in that person. Envy causes us to focus on the negative qualities of others, ignoring their virtues. Also, envy is often accompanied by feelings of injustice. We believe that other people are getting what they don't deserve and that we, on the contrary, are undervalued. Therefore, we tend to exaggerate the shortcomings of those we envy and minimize their positive qualities to justify our own failure. In addition, the fear of our own failure pushes us to criticize. Envy can be triggered by the fear that we will never achieve the same level of success as others. To cope with this fear, we begin to belittle their achievements. Finding faults in others allows us to feel better about ourselves and justify our own inability to achieve what we want. What can we do about it? First, recognize the problem and acknowledge your feelings. Simply admit to yourself that you are experiencing envy. It doesn't make you a bad person, it's just a human feeling. Then focus on your accomplishments instead of comparing yourself to others. Try to remember your own successes. Focus on what you have, not what you lack. And be grateful for it. Develop empathy. Try to look at a situation through the eyes of another person. Engage in self-development. Invest time and energy in your hobbies and interests. Remember that every person is unique and has their own strengths and weaknesses. And instead of envying others, it is better to focus on your own development. Have you ever felt this way? Finally, it is worth mentioning cognitive distortions. These are peculiar errors or simplified schemes of thinking through which we pass all incoming information. They help us react quickly to what is happening, but they often distort reality. For example, the halo effect, when one positive quality of a person makes us see all of the person's actions in a positive light, even if they are not supported by facts. Or the horn effect, where one negative act overshadows all others. If a person has made a negative first impression, we will only look for confirmation of our negative assessment in their behavior. Let's talk more about cognitive distortions, those little traps our brains set for ourselves. To make it clearer, I'll give you a few examples from life. Imagine you're walking down the street and you trip over a rock. Instead of just thinking, well, it happens, I wasn't paying attention, you start blaming it on the uneven sidewalk or city officials. This is an example of personalization, the tendency to blame yourself for all the trouble. Or here's another situation. Your coworker hasn't responded to your message. And you immediately think, he's ignoring me, which means he doesn't like me. That's mind reading. We attribute our thoughts and feelings to other people without any basis. What about catastrophizing? Imagine you're late for an important meeting. And instead of just apologizing, you start imagining the worst possible consequences. You'll get fired, everyone will judge you, etc. We tend to exaggerate the significance of negative events and present them in the darkest colors. Imagine you're watching a TV show where the main character constantly makes some mistakes. And instead of just enjoying the story, you start comparing him to yourself and thinking, how stupid he is. I would never do that. This is a prime example of the superiority effect. We often overestimate our abilities and think that we could handle any situation better than anyone else. And it's not just about soap operas. We can compare ourselves with colleagues, friends, even strangers on the subway. And every time we find some advantage in ourselves. What about generalizing? Let's say you argued with a friend once and got really offended. And now you think that all your friends are just as tactless and tactless people. That's an overgeneralization. We tend to draw conclusions based on one or a few events without considering the totality of the information. Here are some more examples of cognitive distortion. We tend to attribute other people's behavior to their personality traits while ignoring the impact of the situation. If your coworker is late for work, you'll immediately think he or she is irresponsible, when in fact he or she may have just been stuck in traffic. We attribute our own qualities, both positive and negative, to other people. If you yourself are prone to laziness, you will suspect others of being lazy as well. We only pay attention to information that confirms our existing beliefs. If you believe that all men can't drive, you will only notice instances where men make mistakes behind the wheel. So why does this happen? The fact is that our brain is a lazy organ. It is always looking for the shortest way to solve a problem. And instead of carefully analyzing the situation, it often uses ready-made templates and stereotypes. And cognitive distortions are one way to simplify information processing. What can we do about it? The first step is to recognize that we are prone to cognitive distortions. Check your thoughts. When you catch yourself having negative thoughts, try asking yourself the question, are you sure it's true? Ask yourself, why do I think this? Are there other explanations for this situation? Look for alternative explanations. Try to look at the situation from different perspectives. To do this, try to gather information from different sources. Develop critical thinking. Learn to analyze information and make informed decisions. By working to minimize the manifestation of cognitive distortions, you'll improve your relationships. You can become more objective in evaluating others and build more harmonious relationships. In addition, understanding that our judgments can be distorted will help us avoid unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings. Also, working on your cognitive distortions is a path to greater self-awareness and personal growth. Remember, cognitive distortions are a normal part of human nature. But by becoming aware of them, we can learn to control them and make more rational decisions. Have you ever noticed these distortions? So, there are many reasons to look for faults in others. And all of them are connected with our desire to protect ourselves, increase our self-esteem and adapt to the world around us. But how can we change this habit and learn to see in people not only flaws, but also merits? How to overcome the habit of constantly finding faults? Let's figure it out together. Imagine that your habit of looking for flaws is an old, creaky door. To replace it, you need to make an effort. But the result is worth it. Let's open that door together and step into a new world where you'll see more beauty and positivity. Do you notice how children look at the world? Their eyes light up with wonder and delight. They are ready to explore everything new and unknown without dwelling on the imperfections. Let's try to recapture that childlike ability to wonder. How to do it? Step out of your comfort zone. Try new hobbies, meet new people, travel. Every new experience is an opportunity to expand your horizons and see the world from a different angle. Meditation helps calm the mind and focus on the present moment. You'll learn to notice the small joys of life and appreciate them. Keep a gratitude journal. Every day, write down a few things you are grateful for. This will help you focus on the positive aspects of life. Why it works. When you have new experiences, your brain makes new neural connections. This helps you form new habits and ways of looking at the world. In addition, new experiences distract you from negative thoughts and help you feel happier. When you're happy, you stop looking for faults. Happiness is the best antidote for negativity. When you experience joy and fulfillment, your ego becomes less demanding. Instead of looking for faults in others, you begin to appreciate their virtues. How do you become happier? You know, I once came across a wise thought: happiness is not a destination, but a way of life. The more I think about it, the more I realize that this is absolutely true. Let's figure out how to make our lives a little brighter and happier. I think you know how important it is to take care of yourself. Imagine you're a flower. It needs light, water and nutrients to bloom in all its glory. So do we humans need care. When we get enough sleep, eat right and exercise, we feel energized and ready to conquer new heights. Remember how you felt after a light morning warm-up. How incredibly light and energized you felt. And when you finally got some sleep after a sleepless night, the whole world shone with new colors. Environment plays a huge role too. Socialize with pleasant people, full of positivity and cheerfulness. Spending time with them, you will notice that you too have become energized and inspired to new achievements. But communicating with people who constantly complain about life is a different matter. Perhaps you have noticed it, it squeezes all the juices out of you, you feel squeezed like a lemon. And another important thing is helping others. Good deeds bring joy not only to others, but also to yourself. What an incredible sense of fulfillment you feel. You realize that doing good is a real medicine for the soul. But the most important thing is not to give up. Change doesn't happen instantly. It is a long process that requires patience and effort. And in the end you will succeed. So, let's make our lives brighter together. Let's take care of ourselves, surround ourselves with positive people, do good deeds and don't forget that happiness is not an end point, but an endless journey. What small joys can you find in your life today? Let's immerse ourselves in the beauty of the world around us. Pay attention to nature. Trees that have been standing for centuries do not judge each other for the fact that one's leaves turn yellow faster than another's. The sea calmly accepts all the vagaries of the weather, then storming, then calming down. And the stars? They shine for millions of years without comparing themselves to other celestial bodies. Why is nature so inspiring? Nature is very diverse, but everything in it is interconnected. Each element plays its own unique role. And at the same time, it all forms a unified whole. Nature is eternal, yet it is constantly changing. It reminds us that everything in this world is temporary and we should not dwell on the little things. There is nothing perfect in nature. But it is this imperfection that makes it so beautiful. Each leaf, each drop of dew is a unique creation. Nature can help us overcome our habit of criticism. How? It expands the mind. Being in nature makes us feel part of something bigger. It helps us look beyond our own problems and see the world from a broader perspective. Contemplating nature helps calm the mind and reduce stress levels. When we are calm, we are less likely to make negative judgments. In addition, nature is an inexhaustible source of inspiration. By observing it, we can find new ideas and solutions. So why not spend more time in nature? Take a walk in the park, go to the forest, just sit on the balcony and watch the clouds. You can take up photography. Taking pictures of nature will help you notice the beauty in the little things. Keep an observation diary, write down your impressions of nature. This will help you understand yourself and your feelings better. Just one of the ways to correct mistakes in yourself is the method of self-analysis. Try to find 10 faults or mistakes in yourself, and then you will realize what dirt there is in yourself. It's very easy to point fingers at others, and it takes courage to find your own mistakes. But when people find faults in themselves, they start dealing with the waste that is in themselves. Let's dig even deeper and talk about how, by analyzing ourselves, we can change the way we treat those around us. Imagine you are a gardener and your soul is a garden. If you want to grow beautiful flowers, you have to first remove the weeds. It's the same with our thoughts and feelings. To let more positivity into your life, you need to get rid of the negativity. Why is self-analysis so important? By analyzing our actions and reactions, we can understand why we act the way we do. Often our actions are due to deep-rooted beliefs and fears. Also, self-analysis helps us to know ourselves better, our strengths and weaknesses. And by recognizing our weaknesses, we can work to correct them and become better people. How to do self-analysis? Keep a diary, write down your thoughts, feelings and observations of your behavior. This will help you see recurring patterns. And talking to loved ones can help you see yourself from the outside. Ask your friends or family for feedback. In case you find it hard to figure things out on your own, seek help from a counselor. Finding your flaws can be very, very difficult and even unpleasant. But it's important to do it. Here's why. So you'll achieve your goal, you'll stop picking on other people. You'll become more tolerant of others. After all, by realizing that everyone is imperfect, we become more forgiving of other people's mistakes. You will improve your relationships with your life partner, family, friends, co-workers. Your relationships will become more harmonious, trusting and bring you joy. Also, working on yourself will increase your self-esteem, bring a sense of satisfaction and help you to believe in your own strength. Imagine you are digging into yourself and you find 10 flaws in yourself. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're honest with yourself and willing to change. Each of us is just an imperfect person and it's okay to have flaws. What matters is what we do to fix them. Thank you so much for being with us. If you learned something useful for yourself or want to share your thoughts, write about it in the comments. Give us a like and click subscribe so you don't miss our new videos and get more content on how to gain confidence, improve your relationships and live a more fulfilling life. Take care of yourself. See you in the next video.